What's up, everybody? We got 3 more new episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man this week, and they set us up for a huge finale. Before we get into episodes 6, 7, and 8, I'd appreciate it greatly if you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as I bring you guys daily videos from the nerdy world every week. But with that being said, let's get into these episodes. Episode 6 opened with Peter Parker's mouth getting him into trouble in class, but his trouble is nothing compared to that of his missing classmate, Lonnie Lincoln. He's been kicked off the football team and his relationship with Pearl is all but torched as he's lost in his new life with the 1/10. That life is even following him home too, as the lies start to build up with his parents, and his brother is pissed he's thrown his life away to save him. Both he and Peter are getting themselves into trouble this week too, and the situations they find themselves in reflect the outcomes they're gonna find, with Peter obviously already becoming Spider-Man and Lonnie becoming Tombstone in the near future. But Team Spider's taking the night off, and Norman is dressed like Coleman Domingo, already put ink to paper for his live-action deal. I love the look. But anyway, Pete gets Nico and Harry together again, trying to play matchmaker, and I hate to say it, but there's a lot of poorly written dialogue trying to give Peter Parker his Peter Parker moments in the show. It doesn't seem to be a problem when he's, yapping mid-fight. That stuff's been great, but the Peter Parker scenes in this episode specifically were tough to watch. Regardless, there was plenty of good here too, as we saw the event that Norman was all dressed up for, and we got a couple cameos there too. We saw Eleanor Bishop, who's Kate Bishop's mom, for those of you who haven't seen the Hawkeye show or seen her in the comics, and then Secretary Ross makes the first of a couple appearances, and finally, Norman tells Ross that John Gallo is Spider-Man. In the show, he's simply an Oscorp security guard, but in the comics, he's a mutant from Brooklyn who goes by the alias Ricochet. So that was a fun name drop, and all the cameos were fun, but the big one and the impactful one was Daredevil. That comes when Oscorp is breached and Pete is called in, ruining his night of matchmaking, as we get a dope showdown between the Devil of Hell's Kitchen and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. This stuff also made me wonder if Jean Falcault is working with Daredevil, because I'd previously speculated that he'd come into play as the veteran once Norman's true colors are shown, and that's coming like now, and she was snooping around Oscorp. Either way, they nailed this fight with the two bickering throughout, mostly Spidey just being amazed by his first true fight, but it highlights something I hope to see as Charlie Cox continues bouncing around the MCU in his own show and other projects as the Devil of Hell's Kitchen, and that's his ability to be the early Daredevil that's quipping in his fights, as well as what the character has become, embracing the devil in his name. Daredevil ends up winning the fight, knocking Spidey out with an epic KO. Norman's pissed when he returns to the building, and Daredevil peeled back a layer of his charade as Peter tells him how he said that Osborn was hiding his true intentions, which obviously the businessman is, and it's his history with Otto Octavius. Then back at the Parker apartment, Peter returns and Harry spilled the beans about Spider-Man, thinking Nico knew. I think it's just building some natural tension there in the Peter Parker and Osborn relationship, so that when Norman falls to Green Goblin, there's all these things to be thrown around between him and Harry. Oh, you did this to me, you did that, and so on. As the show builds its villains. The episode closed on that too, as Mac Gargan gets his scorpion implant from Doc Ock. That'll come into play later though, as Peter Parker's got some stuff to deal with first. He and Pearl are going through it, and it's an interesting predicament, as the two sharing their problems with each other would be the cause and effect if it was their own problems. Peter kept his secret from Nico, which is his problem, and Lonnie shut Pearl out when he joined the 1/10, as the creators continue building up to the rise of Tombstone. But Peter's also got to worry about his work with Norman, and they're searching for Otto Octavius. Peter realizes he's using gamma radiation after throwing out the idea of solar energy, shout out Sam Raimi, and this also feels like it's setting up multiple villain origins like Tombstone and Doc Ock getting his arms fused into his spine. On the flip side, Harry's trying to smooth things over with Nico for himself and for Peter, but it works out better for his case. He and Nico have themselves a night out, and it ends with a driving lesson that leads to Nico racing and drawing her powers out. Now, I'm no Nico Minoru expert, but it was either the chaos element of her magic or the heroism, but it feels like the chaos because of the situation, and she's also unaware she's using them, at least it seemed like that to me. Then over in Central Park North, Pearl stumbles upon Lonnie and the 1/10 thanks to the tip from his brother. She's trying to get him out of there, but then Scorpion attacks while she's there, and we get some more epic action as Spidey comes in to save the pair before taking on his new foe. Spidey holds his own, and with some advice from Norman, takes Scorpion down, running out of web fluid in the process. That's a kicker because Scorpion's not done yet, and Norman took the earpiece out after the false victory, leaving Peter alone and unprepared for round 2. That part of the fight doesn't go well for Spidey as Scorpion goes ham on him, taking him to near death before Norman sends the Goblin Glider in and gets him out of there in a thrilling conclusion. But only for that episode, because we've still got to dive into the best episode of the 3 that dropped this week. Episode 8 picks up with Peter being rushed to Oscorp, where they take his blood, which I thought was an interesting thing to focus on, and then not touch again, as it continues to unravel Norman's true intentions, which are far more sinister than assisting Spider-Man. Those sinister intentions are layered on top of this episode for every scene featuring Norman, and now that the suit is donezo, Norman's given an ultimatum. He's demanding things of Peter now that he stops holding back and unlocks his true potential, and to me, that sounds a hell of a lot like what happens to Spider-Man when the symbiote suit comes out, and hopefully, I really hope, they're teasing that for season 2. Like, just imagine after his best friend Lonnie falls into Tombstone and then Norman Osborn turns into the Green Goblin he's just left, trying to find this power to fight those he knows now other than just street criminals, and then here comes the symbiote suit, which takes his morals out of the picture when he's fighting. But I'm getting sidetracked as with Spider-Man sidelined, Norman calls in the cops to arrest Otto, but he underestimates his old friend, because even though the arms aren't in his back yet, he's lethal with them. But once he's out of his lab, with the spinal extension behind him, he's taken in by Ross, an Iron Man, who makes a cameo with probably my least favorite Iron Man design ever, although a classic one. Anyway, Peter and Pearl have a science project to get done until Lonnie shows up at Pearl's door, but I'm not quite sure why, because he pretty much came to tell her, I'm not changing. Despite the attack splintering the 1/10, he's staying loyal, which then leads to Peter, not Spider-Man this time, jumping out of the window, trying to save the situation. That was far and away one of my favorite Peter Parker moments, probably my favorite that this show's produced so far. They carry that back to Peter going home early to an empty apartment, with May being called into work, and he just sits and thinks of Uncle Ben for a bit, but the answers aren't there in the apartment, so he goes to Norman, who's been filling Ben's role in his life since he's become Spider-Man, only for Norman to drop the line, with great power comes great respect. It was just perfect, manipulating Uncle Ben's iconic line, and it's at the perfect moment in Peter's life as he's desperate for someone to be that figure he aspires to be, and Norman just isn't him. Yes, at a base level, it is just the businessman in Norman saying that, but it's not necessarily bad there, it's the path Norman is willing to go down for his respect that have been teased in the show so far that are not the same ones Peter would be willing to go down. So, this was just a perfect moment as it seems Green Goblin might be born next week. But the chameleon, at least with his mask on, makes his debut this week, selling Octavius out to the 1/10. Now, Otto was obviously just arrested, so they're gonna find an empty lab or his assistant or even cops, but I think it's setting up Lonnie actually becoming Tombstone, not just by name, as Peter gets his iconic Spider-Man suit from Harry, marking his evolution to being his own Spider-Man. Honestly, I think those 3 episodes, this week's drop, were probably my favorite bunch so far. I didn't love episode 6, but episodes 7 and 8 are just so damn good, and the Daredevil stuff in episode 6 was great, so there's that. They just continue to cook with the small moments for Peter, though, that are going to lead to those massive moments for Spidey, and I love that. But that's going to do it for my breakdown of episodes 6, 7, and 8 from your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Big, I mean huge shout out to Jeff Trammell and the creative team behind this show because it's just blowing my expectations out of the water, and I had decently high expectations for the show going into it. Let me know what you thought of this week's episodes though down in the comments below, and make sure you have a great day.